Eaten from the Indus, prayed in the Indus. I have seen her at her most voluminous, at her width, in the upper Saraiki belt, at her most spiritual in Sakkar, and at her most vulnerable at Kaiti Bandar, where if the powers that be, and many of them are actually here in Lahore, if they will, she gets to meet the sea. And it's very important that she does meet the sea, and I think this is something we have to keep on emphasizing. Next slide, please. Yet I would never say that I actually know the Indus. I do not know the Indus. Her oxygen-rich alluvial waters are too muddied and too murky for me to see through. Visibility in the Indus, if you've ever swum in it, is only 5 millimeters in front of your face. So if you put your hand here, you can't see it. So she continues to mystify, hiding what lurks beneath. Next slide, please. It is, I think I put a song with this anyway. It is her refusal to be completely legible that has infuriated the men in power who have imprisoned her through dams, barrages, canals, pollution, and narrow embankments that any true inhabitant of this great river system will tell you are nothing short of criminal. Next slide, please. My work as an artist does not look at the entirety of the 3,500 kilometer stretch of Arabian Sea. Instead, I narrow my lens to one point, a 10-kilometer stretch of river between the twin hill cities of Sakkar and Ruri, the Labbi Mehran, the lips of the Indus, where she drops 1 meter in elevation, marking a lower course and 600-kilometer journey to the sea. I choose to see this sight not through the eyes of humans alone, but through the river's shyest and most resilient mammal, the Indus River. Has no need for they just have a pinhole for an eye. So they can only sense changes in light and dark. So if we go to the next slide, shameless selfie of me behind me. So I have a pinhole camera, which is one of the first types of cameras. And these are the types of images that come out of it. They're weird, they're murky, they're shaky. And so in some way I try to mimic how does the dolphin actually see these historical and religious sites that are on the Indus River? Next slide, please. So they're turned into these, what we call cyanotype. It's a type of photo process. And they're merged with various different archives as well as scientific data. So, next slide. So they turn into these tapestries. You can see here and here. It's a little less visible with this lighting, but they become these big tapestries. Next slide, please. Oh, that's me. My gym is also my studio, so that's a perspective of me with the work as well as my squat rack, in case you were wondering if I do squats. So, thank you. So, next slide, please. And the next slide. Some of the work that's been done as part of the project. Next slide. So inadvertently, this project has also been an archive of what was and what is. So this shrine over here is a photo taken in the 1930s of Khwaja Khizr Jo Asthana, which was wiped out by a flood in the 1950s. Then the third photo is what the shrine looked like in 2019. And then the last photo is what the shrine looks like now after the floods. So with climate change, we're also witnessing a loss of heritage as well. Next slide. This series is also over there. So again, talking about changes in the river. This is the river Indus in 2500 BC, the river Indus in 250 BC, 250 AD, under the Talpurs in 1700s. And Sakhar, as you can see, Sakhar is the constant point. So you can see how much it's changed. Maujuda Sindh with the canal irrigation system. And next slide, please. And this is Sindh in flood. So you can see the sort of comparison where the old beds of the river were. As devastating as this flood is, it has revealed to us where the river once was and how important it is for the river to drain properly and how important it is ultimately for the river to go to the sea, actually. So people have asked me on many occasions, why dolphins? And my instinct is to say, why not? I love dolphins. But in earnest, we must understand that in a country that now ping-pongs between extreme drought and uncontrollably torrential rain, the dolphin becomes a symbol of the health of a river. Shockingly resilient to pollution, our Bulhan requires two things: food and adequate water. The health of their population is linked to the health of the river itself. More than 90% of Pakistan depends on the Indus Basin for sustenance, as do 100% of our river dolphins. The river therefore dictates both of our futures. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you, Zulfikar. That was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He's a wildlife activist, if you guys couldn't tell. He's also a textile artist, right here. He's also one of the kindest people. And it's his kindness, and also as an artist, he is all about observation and listening. And so the body of work that he's managed to create out of Sindh, I feel like a lot of that is from his listening and observation, which is why he, from Sindh, everyone loves him, because they feel represented by Zulfikar. So thank you for the Sindh representation. Right next to Zulfikar, we have Qudsiya Rahim, who many of you may be familiar with. She has an organization called the Lahore Binale, which puts together great exhibitions, public art, makes it accessible, creates an appreciation of art. Can you hear me? Can you hear me on the stairs? Okay, great. All right. And right next to Qudsiya, we have someone from Islamabad, Ahmad Mia, although he may say he's not from Islamabad because Islamabad is a relatively new home to him. But the pandemic brought about this venture capitalist by the day, creating Dastan Goi, which is essentially an artist collective, and he has a studio where artists are in Islamabad, where they can work on their art as a residency program as well. So before I ask them any questions, I wanted to ask you, when you hear the term art, what comes to mind? One word answer. Just say it out loud. That way I'll be able to know if you can hear me. So when you hear art, what is the first word that comes to your mind? Life? Expression? Reminding? Okay. What else? Freedom? Anything else? जो आपकी रूह कहती है. Okay. Okay. ठीक. All right. I'm gonna ask you. What comes to your mind when you hear the word art? One word. Freedom.
Sorry, freedom.
Good see it? Self-expression.
Truth.
Truth. All right. So great. Truth, right? So I'm a journalist. My name is Sahraddin Ghazi. I don't know how I ended up moderating this. It was a shock to me. I found out on social media that I was moderating it. And it's an art panel. So for me, art is about expression. It's about politics. It's about representation. And I work for an international organization called Vice World News. And one of the biggest stories internationally yesterday was two climate activists threw a can of tomato soup on a Van Gogh in the UK at the National Gallery. Okay, so why did they do that? Why did they throw a can of tomato soup? For art in our drawing rooms, it's an investment. It's maybe a drawing room conversation, and I would imagine many elites in Pakistan who actually invest in art and buy art would be very upset that a Van Gogh got defaced. It wasn't. There was a glass on it, so don't worry, it's okay. But what ended up doing was having a conversation. Did anyone know, anyone who's following the story, these two climate activists, the reason why they did it was they wanted to raise awareness about 100 contracts, oil drilling contracts that got approved in the UK. So they wanted to start a conversation on it. And they chose Van Gogh's Sunflowers, which is a painting that this artist, if you're not familiar with Van Gogh, he suffered from mental health disease and he didn't get to see much success in his life. But he built, when he painted the sunflowers, it's about gratitude and community and expression. And the fact that they chose that, and he was a very different person. We don't know how he would feel about the way his art has become this investment, and a lot of these oil companies are also on the boards of museums as well. So it was a great way to make a political statement. And then we're in Pakistan here, where we have the floods going on, right? And what we've seen is, Zulfikar is an example, he's been doing a lot of activism in Sindh, but while he's doing that activism in Sindh during the day, at night he was making this. How is that happening? Just want to start off with you. How did that happen?
I'll also first, I'm so sorry, I used to be a teacher. The acoustics here are very strange, so if you talk, we can definitely hear you, and it's a little distracting. So I'm so sorry. I'm just going to mention if you can all stay as quiet as possible. What was your question? I'm so sorry.
How did it come about, you creating this body of art
Yeah.
and the floods?
Well, I think one, climate change is something that's been affecting Pakistan from even before these floods. I mean, you yourself went when there was a huge drought, and when there was an occasion in which we had the driest year on record for 60 years, I think, and places like Jacobabad were boiling to the point where human beings couldn't even, if it's 1 degree more, human beings can't survive these temperatures. And then, and so that was something that people were trying to grapple with, and suddenly there was a flood. And I think for me in Pakistan, we want simple solutions to our very large issues. And one of those issues is that our infrastructure, now again, I'll say I'm an artist, I'm not I'm not an engineer, I'm not a whatever, or anything. I did environmental sciences for not that long. But our infrastructure is in itself anti-poor, anti-indigenous, anti-people, and anti-nature. We don't build infrastructure with people in mind, we build infrastructure over people, for other people, to get from point A to B. And if you're in the middle of the many possibilities, you get wiped out. And I think what these floods have shown us, one, I think it was important to highlight how much the river has changed, how living it is. The river is a living thing that continues to change and it continues to move. And an event like this, if it weren't for all the embankments and barrages, the Indus would have likely have changed course. And it's important to also know that the Indus has been going to the sea for 30 million years. For as long as the Himalayas have existed, the Indus has existed. What this infrastructure has done, if you go to Dadu district now, we're 2 months in, the water is still there. The water is still there. It's come to a point where people are dying of prolonged nutritional issues. And the superhighway has acted as a dam, stopping water going from these areas to the river, ultimately to the sea. And not only that, every year we lose about 100 to 500 acres of land to the Arabian Sea because the mud and silt that was originally deposited in the district of Thatta from the Indus, because the Indus is not depositing this mud, we're losing that whole district. So there'll be a point in the next 50 years we'll have no southern Sindh. And I mentioned Sindh not necessarily because I think it's the only important province in Pakistan or it's the only one worth talking about. I say it because it's the lower course of the Indus, which means that any action upstream has a reaction downstream.
The reaction upstream is we don't have much control over it. Glaciers are going to be melting. Climate change, we don't produce that much. We don't have that many carbon emissions, but we are definitely facing it. So it's something that we're going to have to respond to. So Qudsiya, the work that you do, specifically, what kind of reaction do you want from society when you produce your public art and when you have these conversations? What for you is like success in terms of the kind of conversations that are generated? It's on.
Well, success has multiple meanings. You have to be really close. Really close? Is this close enough? Okay. Well, success has multiple meanings. And I don't think artists work with the point of view of success. Artists, like I said, self-expression. The first thing that they are true to themselves. Before they project their work or put up in an exhibition space, first it has to pass their own threshold of what they think is acceptable to actually then bring it in front of the audience. A lot of artists I know who are also working, but they never get to show their work in the public. So success for different people means differently. And of course, I can speak as a foundation in this case because what we're doing is we are working with the artists, local, international, both. So I think I'm going to go back a few steps and we're going to say what got the foundation started. And the reason why we started the foundation was that a lot of us, it's a collective, it's not something that belongs to me or something that I started. I did start it, but it's not something that I own. So hoping that in time it will become an institution in itself. But to exist, for us, our goals were very different. The first biennial was to exist, to do some, to look at what was missing. Because a lot of us are academics also, so we wanted to see what is missing. Public art, art in white cube spaces. In Pakistan, there is a lot of emphasis on making these amazing artworks that we never get to experience it outside because we don't have museums, for example. We don't have public spaces where art is being exhibited, seen, read. We have a big problem about reading art. You know, we come and see an exhibition and a lot of times people will see something like this and they forget to ask questions. Ask questions to themselves, ask questions from the artists or each other. So success had multiple meanings for us. The success for us was certainly to see what art is do. How can we bring it outside of our drawing rooms, in our case, and outside of the museum spaces when we're talking about an international space. So our artists are given a platform. We're talking 10 years ago, we're talking 12 years ago, because that's when we started, right? So we wanted to bring opportunities to the artists, because the work that we were producing at that time was already considered far superior from a lot of our neighboring countries. So how myself as an artist, from a family of art intellectuals, how do we in our part of the generation look at it and bring it forward? So it just started very humbly to exist, to work in public spaces, to bring collaborations, to our core values were work with other academics, work with other people who are thinking people, bring opportunities, bring a plurality within the medium, and just those kind of discourses were important to us. And we continue to do that. The journey ahead, small steps, and being true to ourselves. I don't see success in a very black and white way. So it's a journey.
Got it. Thank you. Imad, tell us about Dastan Goi and the kind of stories you want to tell through art, through your platform.
So Dastan Goi started very serendipitously, where I was in Pakistan for my wedding in March of 2020. So we were supposed to get married on our farm in Islamabad and then head back home to Dubai, where life was supposed to continue on. But if you guys remember, 18th of March was my wedding, and 21st of March was our rukhsati. 22nd of March was the end of travel as we know it. Flights were cancelled, everyone's travel plans were cancelled. We weren't able to go back home for 6 months. But it was, I think, what made me realize that I didn't really have a relationship with Pakistan, because growing up, I was in Dubai most of my life. I spent 9 years in Canada for university, and then worked there for a bit. So I didn't necessarily have a connection with Pakistan. I didn't have that many Pakistani friends. I didn't know much about my culture, about my heritage. So for us, it was very selfishly, how can we learn more about who we are, where we come from, and the stories that we have to tell. So Dastan Goi has evolved over the course of the 2 years that now I'm living here. And we started off as an online events platform, which then went into becoming a design studio. And then we were like, we have this amazingly beautiful space in Islamabad, and I happen to know such amazing, extremely talented artists, because my background is not art related whatsoever. Why not get them on the board and then start seeing how we can kind of increase our share of voice? What I did realize living in Dubai and living in Canada was Pakistan didn't have enough share of voice in terms of artists. We have a lot of amazing artists, and I completely agree with Qudsiya when she says that we have amazing talent. But how do you, in an age of social media, in an age where people have the ability to kind of take the conversation into their own hands, and all these beautiful galleries that are outside, how do we take that conversation to ourselves? And so we started, as the events platform, the design studio, and then the residency program, and it went really, really well because we didn't know what we were doing. And that kind of spiraled into now we have an art gallery. This is our 6th show that's showing over here, thanks to Indus Conclave. We just did a show with Sabah Kizilbash about 2 weeks ago in Islamabad. And for us, Dastan Goi is very much trying to build bridges. We're not a platform for Pakistan, for Pakistanis only. We try to build bridges, and we try to build the relationship that I wish that I had growing up. How do I kind of come to terms with my Pakistani heritage? How do I come to terms with the people that I want to get to know? Because there's such a breadth of people that exist here. Like when I got to meet, Zulfi for the first time, and he took us into Sindh and got to work with him, like it's just so warm, it's so welcoming, and that is what I think is truly beautiful. That is what truly kind of changes your perspective about Pakistan. And that's what I want other people outside to see. Because coming from Dubai, growing up there, I was scared. I was literally scared, because all I would hear, terrorists, bomb blast, this, that, the other. I would refuse to go out alone. So that is what I wanted to kind of come to terms with, is how can I build a relationship with my country and my parents that I am proud of. And that's what we're out to kind of do.
Thank you. There was a German playwright by the name of Bertolt Brecht, and he famously said, art is not a mirror with which we reflect reality, but it's a hammer in which we shape it. And I love this quote, but I also really adore him, because before the Nazis kind of took over Germany, or when they were rising in power, he was the first artist they censored. They had him pulled from theater because they knew that he could create problems. And then he was censored, he went in exile in the US, and then he was censored there. So this poor guy was censored his whole life. But I want to ask you, what kind of reality do you want to shape with your art?
No, it would be an honor to be censored by whoever. I think what is the reality? You know, I want to create an empathetic reality, and I know that sounds like maybe a cop-out or an easy answer, but I think for me, you know, with the work that I've been doing, particularly looking at the dolphins of Sindh, at the dolphins of Pakistan, is to create an empathetic environment in which we can see our pride as a people, as Sindhi people, as Saraiki people, as Pakistani people, being linked to beings that are not human. And I think that's quite a radical empathy as well. And of course, the humanness is involved as well. So to create links between the destiny of an animal and the destiny of the entire nation, I think is to create a form of radical empathy. And I was at a talk with my sister. Well, we were moderating the talk, and Naomi Klein, she's a writer and environmentalist based in Canada. She said, we're living in the time of prophecy. Every religion has foretold the time we're living in now, which is when there is total environmental collapse. The Euphrates is drying, the Indus is, as hard as it is to say, the Indus is dying. And it's a man-made dying. And so in this time of prophecy, what the hope that we have left is extreme generosity, radical empathy, and at the risk of sounding cliche, love.
Thank you. Qudsiya, what kind of reality would you like to shape with public art?
People's reality, a plural reality. Different people, different voices coming together, coexisting, partnerships, collaborations. This is not the time for, one man kind of a heroic kind of a thing. We have to understand there is no Messiah coming. And we are the people who have to shape our own future. I think that's the best part of it all, that we are the heroes of our own story. So I think it's very important that we realize that, and whatever opportunities that present us, whether they are given, whether they are created, forged, we need to take ownership. We need to take ownership of our history, we need to take ownership of our present, and we need to enjoy what we have, be grateful, and walk towards our future. Because if we don't take ownership, nobody's coming. We have to be those heroes of our own story. So the kind of future we have to make our own. These are our decisions. When we decide that we are going to do tourism a certain way, these are our decisions. When we decide to build cities in the way that we are building the cities, those are all our decisions. So I think I totally echo what you're saying, is that if we do not change our ways, if we're not empathetic, we don't, recognize each other, who's sitting in this room, we all recognize each other, and the wealth of strength that comes, I think that's the way to go about it, and say what is left, or what is yet to come.
Thank you. Imad? Same question for you, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit, just to bother you, sorry. As a bridge builder, what kind of reality do you want to shape, for example, for other hyphen Pakistanis? We talk a lot about Pakistanis outside Pakistan. They have a certain kind of power over this country as well. Right now they're just using it as political power to harass politicians outside Pakistan, but they have other powers, right? So what kind of a conversation or reality would you like to hammer for them about Pakistan and what you've seen?
First, I think I'd like everyone to kind of look within themselves. Like the only way, like you can't create change in other people, in my opinion. It's you can change yourself. And again, I want to echo what Zulfi said. As soon as you become more empathetic, the way that you greet people, the way that you talk to people, the way that you present yourself to people, echoes on the other. Give a smile to someone in the random street, like they'll smile back. Heckle someone, and they'll heckle back. So what I would like to do, if there's anything that I'm able to do, is change for myself how I feel about Pakistan. And I think by doing that, I hope to be able to be the echo for other people. Like that's the only change that I can do. And I think, like coming to your little question about with people outside, it's just a dialogue. It's being able to create a dialogue and get acceptance from inside and from outside. Like there's always this fear of the other, but in this case, the other is still us. So how do you, like for instance, when I talk about bridges, I don't just talk about expat Pakistanis, I talk about the people. Currently, there's like 6 artists, 3 who have never been to Pakistan that are in my house in Islamabad that I have to go back to right after this. So, that's what I want to do. I want them to be, like I want to be, like hopefully, I want to bring that empathy and that welcoming nature to these guys to then go and be able to be that way about Pakistanis and about Pakistanis elsewhere.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to Q&A really soon. So I have one last question for all of you. Could you tell our audience here one artist or one artwork that you think no one knows about in Pakistan, but you wish everyone knew about, and then they can go and Google them, and we can spread the word about them. So I'm going to start with you, Zulfikar, because you're at the end. You have to pick one. But I want all of you to know that they want to say a bunch of names. There's no bias here, and I'm just forcing them to choose a favorite. I'm being that bad person asking a parent choose your favorite image. Sorry.
We're in luck because I suddenly thought of someone and I'm excited. Normally, even if people say, what are your inspirations? There's so many, I get so tongue-tied. But one artist whose work, it's actually part of her older work. Her name is Moreshin Al-Layari. She's an Iranian artist, and she made this piece. It was a multimedia piece. It was a video as well as what do you call it? Those digital sculptures. The sculpture. What do you call those digital sculptures that are made in a machine and you can make like a plastic sculpture?
3D.
3D, yeah. And she made this piece called Humma. And Humma is in sort of very old, particularly Iranian, but even Arab folklore, is a jinn. And she's a female jinn, and she's responsible for fevers. But she's also responsible for volcanic eruptions. So for her, the idea at the time, COVID was happening, so this idea of fever, people were getting fevers, but also the earth is in a fever. The earth is heating up. So it's very interesting. I mean, it just shows the power of art to dig up whatever it is, historical figures, mythological figures, human, animal, whatever, and make them into symbols. Art is, what is art? It's gestures and symbols, right? Which is why us artists can only do so much. We need our policymakers to start listening a little bit, if they would only be so kind. But yeah.
What's here?
Yeah. So I have a slightly different answer to this, and I think that's the best way to go about it. Obviously, there is no one answer, there is no one artist. But the group of artists, my advice would be please invest in your own art, in your artists, look them up. If there is an exhibition somewhere, please go take a look. Ask questions, ask them what they've made. Look at these beautiful paintings, whether here or elsewhere in the world. See what they talk about. They're all talking about us. They're all talking about our social issues or cultural issues. or even personal journeys. I think we need to invest in us, in each other, and that's the way that we need to look ahead. So, yeah, that's it.
Imad?
I'm going to cop out and be like Kutsi over here, where I'm not going to give one name because I think it's just not fair. It's not fair to give one name. I think we're doing some really exciting things. I'm really excited about a show that we're working on in November. We're bringing actually a group of artists and we're opening up our space and we're bringing two spaces together. One of the artists is over here as well. And, you know, I'm really excited about that. So we're working with a whole set of people. And I truly do believe that, like, you know, everyone has something special to say. I think that art can be just like any other language for people to communicate. And I also agree with Kutsia when she says where we should just ask, and like sometimes, again, like it's very difficult to speak to the other. If you just ask, like they will love you for it, and I will love you for it. And that's how I think conversations can start. So any artist, anyone that you see, from the smallest person, across person on the street, to like the most contemporary artist that you might see anywhere in the gallery, I think they're all really most diverse.
I guess in conclusion on Monster's favorites, but they want to encourage you. Thank you though, I appreciate it. That was great. Also like it was a Pakistani, so safe.
But encouraging curiosity, right? So more exploration. Kutsia mentioned journey as well. I think you also mentioned journey as art. And I think all of us need to get more curious about how we can express ourselves through art. So I want to open up to questions. Mike? Questions? Who has a question? We'll have a mic coming towards you. Just raise your hand. You know, if I asked you किसको selfie चाहिए इनके साथ तो सब खड़े हो जाएंगे. लेकिन mic के बाद, it's okay. Do we have any art students here? Okay. Thank you.
Right, I'll break the ice.
Thank you.
So since we're talking about journeys, you're sort of new here. Biennale Foundation is young. You haven't been in this landscape for that long. So do you see that in this short period of time that you've engaged in this environment, in your own respective journeys, do you feel that the pace of change, you talk about environment, you talk about, let's say, social issues and lots of other sort of issues that we have in our country, do you feel that the pace of change is constantly kind of changing? It's becoming very, very sort of quick and it's emergent. It's like we're in a state of emergency in some ways. And how much of that is a concern and part of your work, consciously or perhaps unconsciously or subconsciously? I don't know if that question makes sense, but I thought it did.
Thank you so much for coming to this talk and listening to everyone. Because I want to make sure that we focus on how I can track and further. So for now, I'll leave you with just hands. Thank you.
As long as
Like when you post and when you try to talk about these things,
Well, no, of course, we don't need to be honest, I mean, outside. I think we need to have exposure to the artists, we need to be exposed to other people making hard work, we need to be, and that helps you, but it's not also needed. Unfortunately, we live in a capitalist world where art also means money. And this is why this leads to your second answer to the second question, which is why I think people resent art, which is why I think people take art negatively because they think of it as the pastime for the rich, which it is, actually. Art is the apex of capitalism, and many people that I have tried entirely wrong. Art can generate billions of dollars a year tax-free. That's tax-free what you're spending on art. And I'm also part of that system too. I'm part of that cycle, I'm part of that way of thinking. So art needs to be more accessible, I think. And this is why people force that knows it's so frustrating that, like when you said children are blind, and we're still, what are we doing about that? I'm not going to mention how I was a guy, and I remember I was going to ask someone for a donation or for a fundraising meeting. Because they didn't go out. And it was sort of, they wanted to the gallery because the gallery represented inside of the guy. So the guy responded to me saying, we'll see what we can have and we'll get back to you. I wanted to go to Japan too. Nice to get up, but I think it's just this frustration of art. We're going to speak to people. And I think that's something that needs to be done.
I
start doing embroidery. This is what I have here. Teenagers from very underprivileged backgrounds, as well as people who were in the 60s and 70s were homeless. And art was big science for art. And I think creativity is across the country. They were in a world like this. So, no matter how, yes, I can do it.
Thank you. I think we should stop. One more question? Sorry. Please. Go ahead.
Sorry, mine was a bit of a technical question. So while all of you promote art and are artists in your own ways, and artists usually reflect whatever is going on in the country and peace of the soul. You will be surprised the moment something hits the body.